So now anybody that is non-technical can use AI to create little applications. While you can't ask, ChatGPT to create some ransomware for you, you can ask it to create all the pieces that then when put together becomes ransomware. And there's a lot of tools that, that AIs that are not commercial that they can build on their own and kind of remove those checks and balances. So now people that aren't even sophisticated can get involved in some of those, malicious activities.
Welcome to the Las Vegas podcast. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Leo. This is our second conversation, and I'm super, super excited to get to know a little bit more about what he's been up to. He is with Healthy Technology Solutions. How are you doing today, Leo?
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great. Happy Monday.
Yeah, happy Monday. Mondays are a beautiful thing. We've had a discussion in the past, and I am super excited to have you back on the show. You're actually our first person that we've had back on the podcast, which is pretty exciting.
Cool. No, glad to be back.
Yeah, no, it's very, very exciting. And we did have a great discussion, but can you just remind our audience about your background and what led you into the IT and cybersecurity?
Sure. I've got a really useless, what I call BSBA, and BS is not Bachelor of Science. And so right out of college, I looking for a job, and somebody I interviewed with liked me, and they said, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. What do you got? And they said, how about computer networking? And that was about 30 years ago. So learned pretty fast and ended up in a consulting environment, where you really learn fast. So every year is like 10 years in a regular job. So that's pretty much how I ended up doing it. That was in California. Built up the business there, sold it, moved to Las Vegas, kind of started over again, just to be in a more tax and business friendly state. And we've since expanded to Florida and San Antonio.
Oh, wow. Well, that's very exciting. And I'm sure, as you said, within this industry, things do grow and change pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
What are some of the changes that you've seen in the last 30 years?
When I first started, when I first got in IT, there was no internet. I mean, there was, but it was like the, ARPANET or whatever, the university system. It took me about a year to convince, at that point, my first employer to get me an internet account, just a dial-up account to get online. So it was, from that to now you can't do business without internet access, and everybody's cell phone has faster access than we did even paying thousands of dollars a month for internet, years ago. So it really, the remote access piece, I mean, especially the MSP business, which really didn't exist 30 years ago. It really started about maybe 20, but it couldn't exist back then because we didn't have that remote access. We didn't have the ability to monitor our clients. We didn't have the ability to remotely connect and remediate issues. So there's a lot of changes.
Got it. And with someone I'm 32 years old, but so I grew up with AOL. And I honestly could not imagine what it was like 30 years ago, like what your job would be if you could. Sorry to kind of take you back, but very interesting and kind of what that looked like 30 years ago.
So before, IT was it was literally just help desk and physically, making sure the servers are running, making sure the end users could work, and resolving, hardware issues, resolving, some user training issues. But what it's migrated into is we are now cybersecurity that happens to do IT. So if the business is not secure, if the business is, if their data gets deleted or encrypted, or, their systems are brought down by bad guys, there's no business. So our primary focus now is security, and then everything else is secondary. Back then, our primary business was making sure people's stuff worked and helping them maybe understand how to, maybe work with it more efficiently or better, or use shortcut keys, things like that. Whereas now that is all not really an afterthought. It's still important because the customer service piece and working with our end users is very important. But if their systems are down because of bad actors, and I don't mean Mel Gibson or or Jean-Claude Van Damme. I mean like bad actors from North Korea or China or Iran. or the script kiddie that lives in his parents' basement in Des Moines, Iowa. All those people want to do is damage people's businesses and steal. So if we miss any of those, opportunities or give them opportunities to do that, it doesn't really matter what kind of customer service we have or how well we treat our end users or what we've taught them, because there's no business and there's nothing for them to work on.
Well,
So that's really the main difference.
got it. And then you did mention like someone possibly sitting in their, I don't know, in their mom's basement or someone in a different country. What are some ways that companies can protect themselves when it comes to these people that are trying to do harm to their business?
So first of all, if nobody is immune. So, and anyone that says, "Hey, do what I tell you or pay me and you'll be 100% secure," I would run, because there's nobody can be 100% secure. You know, Major government agencies with billions of dollars in budget are getting compromised. So it's really a matter of really paying it. It's really doing a holistic approach to security, and you know, doing everything you can, and then making sure you've got the right backups in place, making sure that you have contingency plans. But really, it's a combination of end user training the staff not to fall victim to the millions of phishing emails, the social engineering phone calls, or now there can be social engineering video calls. So you can actually have a call that looks just like this, but it's not the person you think it is. It could be just an AI generated conversation on video. So you actually can no longer trust the voice you're talking to is the person whose voice whether it's your family member or it's a business associate. And now to the point where soon, by the end of this year, I guarantee that video deepfakes will be mainstream. There's already been a few that have been compromises or thefts using video deepfakes, but it's going to become much, much more mainstream as there'll be free tools online to do these things. So there's a training, but then there's always, the regular antivirus, the anti-malware, the, managed detection and response, the advanced detection and response, the data backup. If you combine all of those things with the end user training, then you are not low hanging fruit. It's like being the only house on the street without an alarm and a Rottweiler. If everybody else has a Rottweiler and an alarm system and a big sign that says "We will shoot you if you come through our door," and yours has a little peace, love, and your house is the one that's going to get burglarized. So not being low hanging fruit for most businesses really is the best defense. Now, if North Korea or Russia or China or Iran decide they want your data, that's a different story. That's much more difficult. But for the average business we deal with, whether it's a doctor's office, a law firm, a construction firm, architecture firm, they're not being directly targeted by these nation states. They're just being targeted by kind of the shotgun approach. You shoot a shotgun in the air and you hope a pellet hits something. That's what the bad guys are doing. They're sending out millions of emails or billions of emails. They're hoping somebody clicks on it. And if you end up on some kind of a list, maybe they try calling you and try and do some deep fakes and do a little bit of research. But it's a different level, whether you're, if you're the NSA or the Office of Personnel Management for the US government, there's a different threat level than Dr. Smith's pediatric office, that sort of thing. So for normal businesses that like we have here, it's doing all the things that you need to do, the training, the backup, and the higher level of security software, and ideally some a zero trust approach. It's that whitelisting, saying nothing can run on my employees' computers that hasn't been approved already. So that's kind of number one in our mind. If we can prevent bad things from running, and we don't know what those bad things are. So the only way to protect you from everything is to say nothing other than this list of 20 applications is allowed to run. And then you are much more safe than maybe your neighbor who doesn't have that.
Understood. I know, Leo, that was a lot of great information. I know I had like 100 different questions that came up to mind when you were speaking. So I do have a question. One of the questions I do have is, when it comes to sources or websites that remote employees can go to, Like, how do you protect the organization when you have remote employees?
So it depends on whether those remote employees are using your company owned computers that you can completely lock down, just like as if they were in your office, or if they are offshore employees. So if they're employees, let's say in Philippines, India, Central South America, whatever the case might be, that are using their own personal computers, and you're hiring them through an agency, those you can't lock those down because they don't belong to you. So now the question is, how do you have them working on your company's data? What we do for our clients with those types of employees is we set them up with Azure virtual desktops. So with Microsoft Azure, those desktops are set that where they can't download anything from that virtual desktop to their computer. They can't print to printers they're attached to their computer. They can't exfiltrate data, and they can't install anything on that virtual desktop because it's completely locked down. So now they only have access to the programs, the applications that you allow them to. And then if you use some productivity monitoring tools, you know what websites they're going to. You block malicious websites or websites that maybe are inappropriate for your business. You block known compromised websites. There's a lot of things that you can do, but that would be my strong recommendation. Never allow somebody that's getting paid $5 an hour in the Philippines who's using their family computer. That's the computer that because you're not talking about people that would to them $5 an hour is a really good wage. They actually have a really nice life. That they have benefits and everything else, but they don't have 5 laptops and iPads and everything else in their home. So their kids and their spouse are also using that same computer. So you don't want your company data touching or those computers touching your company networks. So you have to use kind of an intermediary and using a virtual desktop. And we happen to use Azure. Some people use VMware. So other people use Citrix. I mean, there's a lot of different, Amazon Web Services has some virtual desktop solutions. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat, but you need some kind of a solution to separate those remote employees from your data.
Got it. Leo, I might be getting on with you very shortly on that. So thank you for sharing that with me. And then, I mean, it's been a couple months since we've chatted. Has anything changed within your organization since a few months ago?
So there's a couple of things. We added San Antonio as a service area, which is exciting because, Texas is a big place. And we've also added credit card processing to our services, just because we found that a lot of a lot of our existing clients are not PCI compliant, and they're getting charged a PCI non-compliance fee, which is not a big deal. Per se, it might be $29 a month or $75 a month, whatever the case might be. But that's not so much the issue. The issue becomes that if they have a customer that they sell something to and that person uses a credit card that then charges that back, if they're not PCI compliant, then they can't contest those chargebacks. So if it's, let's say, a plastic surgery, medical practice, and they're doing some kind of reconstructive surgery and it's $20,000 because it's not covered by insurance, someone charges 20 grand on their credit card, has a surgery, and then charges it back. If they're not PCI compliant, they have no leg to stand on. They just lost that money.
Hmm.
I mean, they could sue the person individually, but what business wants to deal with that? Where all you need is just a little bit of care once a year to run a little test that keeps you compliant.
Got it. And what are some ways that companies or organizations can make sure that they are PCI compliant?
Look at their credit card statements, their merchant statements. It'll say that they'll show that there's a non-compliance fee. If you're paying a non-compliance fee, then according as far as that merchant services company is concerned, you're not compliant, which means that you don't have, appeal rights and things like that. So it's really just a matter of logging into the portal. We do this for a lot of our clients where we'll log in, we'll run the tests and make sure that they are compliant. And for our clients that we process for, we definitely make sure that they're compliant just because that's really, one of the reasons that they're with us.
Got it. No, and it's a huge, huge thing. So that's so amazing that that's something that you offer. And when it comes to cybersecurity threats, they're constantly changing, they're constantly evolving. What are some of the biggest threats businesses are facing today?
So it's still it's still the same things that have been going on for the last few years. The business email compromise is a major issue because once they get into your email account, they have everything that you've sent or received. They know who you talk to. They know how you talk. And there oftentimes will be things in your email like credit card statements or phone bills. And those phone bills oftentimes have your PIN. So now they can, potentially steal your number. And then, if they get into your bank or they try to do a password reset, they set a rule to that where that email then gets forwarded to them. They could potentially take over your bank account and then they port because they have your PIN, they're able to transfer your cell phone number to a burner phone and they receive the text from the bank to confirm. And so now they have full access to your bank. Microsoft 365, it used to be that if you had multi-factor authentication, you were safe. Well, now just clicking on a bad link while you're logged into your Microsoft 365, they steal your session token. They can insert it on their computer. Now they're in as you and completely bypassing multi-factor authentication. So there's those types of things that are, major threats. But on top of that, throw in all the AI. So now anybody that is non-technical can use AI to create little applications. While you can't ask ChatGPT to create some ransomware for you, you can ask it to create all the pieces that then when put together becomes ransomware. And there's a lot of tools that, that AIs that that are not commercial, that they can build on their own and have, and kind of remove those checks and balances. So now people that aren't even sophisticated can get involved in some of those, malicious activities and throw in now the ability to speak with anybody's voice. So anybody, no matter what your accent, can now sound like me, sound like you. And they can call your employees, they can call your family and pretend to be you and ask for stuff. So there's like that ability to really fool people. So all of those things combined really make it a very dangerous neighborhood online.
Got it. And you did mention trainings. Like, what are some of the trainings that employers should be offering to their employees to protect their business?
Well, it's a security awareness training. It's what are the threats? How do you browse the internet? Because most people, if they want to go to, a particular website, they search for that website instead of typing in the website name that they know. They're searching for, let's say, Wells Fargo, and then they click on the very first link that pops up. Oftentimes, that first link is malicious. It's versus if you just type wellsfargo.com and hit enter, you go right there. You go right to that website. So just little things like that, but also how to spot a phishing email, how to check, hover over a URL to see where it really goes, how to not be fooled by, people pretending to be coworkers, and not change, HR people not changing the direct deposit information for an employee based on an email that was either compromised or fake. Bob Smith, at abccompany.com sends an email to HR from, Bob Smith at, bad guy.cn from China. That's probably not the person. You probably shouldn't change where you're direct depositing their next paycheck, in a couple of days without maybe calling them on the phone and saying, hey, you change your bank account. That's just little things like that. So there's a lot of security awareness training, and there's also phishing training. So, like we send phishing emails to our clients, and then we see who falls for them. And if they fall for them, then we have conversations with either that individual or with the employer if a lot of people are falling for it and doing some additional training. And everyone's busy. There's nothing, it doesn't make somebody a bad person or lazy or stupid for falling for this stuff, because everybody's really busy and you get an email from a name you recognize. You may not have the time to look deeper, but you have to at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately. And Leo, are these trainings that your company provides, or do you guys just provide a resource?
So any of our clients, we provide a base level of training. Actually, any client or any company we engage with, even if they don't hire us, we still provide them with a training portal for their employees. It's a once a year training. For our clients that want more, we provide where there's weekly micro trainings, little 30-second trainings once a week. And then in addition to that, the phishing simulation where they're receiving emails that, that we're generating that that they can then either fall for or not. And we get a report back on who clicked, who entered data. And that's a great tool for seeing who needs a little bit more, a little more training.
Got it. No, and I just love that. It's awesome that you guys do that for people and for companies. And then, many small to mid-sized businesses think they're not targets for cyber attacks. Why is that a super dangerous mindset?
Because who is more susceptible to being compromised? A small business that has no professional IT staff. They may be working with a company like mine, or their IT might be the receptionist's boyfriend, after work type of thing. And they're not devoting any resources to training. They're not devoting any resources to, more advanced cybersecurity solutions, firewall solutions versus a large company. A large company they have somebody that maybe probably has 30 years experience like myself as their chief information officer. They have a chief security officer. They have, all these different levels, an IT manager and staff, plus the budget to, to really, to properly back things up, to properly secure the infrastructure. And those companies even get compromised, but it's much more difficult versus the small business. That is who the majority of the compromises are against. You just don't hear it because, when MGM got compromised because someone in the help desk made a mistake, that affected stock price. That was international news. When, a small business in Las Vegas or Florida or wherever gets compromised, one, they're embarrassed. They don't tell anybody. They don't know, oftentimes, even though legally they're supposed to, but it's not going to be news. So even if they report it to the state or to Health and Human Services, it's still not going to be front page in the paper, unless it's a really egregious, something really egregious happened. So those are, the businesses that get compromised the most because they're the ones falling for one of the simple phishing emails that are still written in bad English.
Got it. And for those emails, is there something that, companies like words or something that they should see? I know you did mention like, maybe it looks like that email, but maybe instead of like .cnn or .com or whatever. But is there words or anything like you've found that, these people that are doing this that they possibly use?
No, because so it used to be you knew right away that it was bogus when it started with greetings of the day. It's not someone from the United States. No one speaks that way in the US. So, but now those people are able to just type that up in ChatGPT and say, please correct the grammar, and translate this into American English. And ChatGPT will will perfectly make it sound like me or you would write. So there's really nothing, there's no language that the bad guys are going to use because depending on what business they're targeting, it's going to be completely different. If it's a medical practice versus a low voltage contractor, that is something that is a problem. They're going to be able to they're going to use it to make sense to the person that they're targeting.
Got it. So, we may be using ChatGPT or an AI software for, a positive resource, but they're using it in a negative way.
Correct. No, and keep in mind now you can actually, like even just built into the Samsung Galaxy phones, I can actually call you and speak to you in any language that exists. And I can be speaking, I'll speak English and you'll hear it in whatever language that I've asked for it to be in. And it's on the fly. And then when you respond back to me, it's going to translate that into English.
Hmm.
And so we're going to have a two-way conversation without those awkward silences, and it will be natural. So now you've got people from anywhere in the world that can have conversations with people anywhere in the world and pretend and use any voice they want. So you have, people that, this I actually know some people that this happened to, but they get a call saying, hey, we've got your kid, pay X dollars because, they know based on they compromise someone's account or based on social media, they know that person happens to be on vacation in Mexico. So now they call the relative saying, we've got your kid, or you got your grandkid, whatever the case might be. And then they put them on the phone real quick. And all they did was they took a couple of snippets of their voice, put it in the AI, typed what they wanted to say. And there's no way to distinguish that from reality.
I know. And it's something that's, as you said, that can be fearful, but we just have to protect ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yes, and so
And, and the other thing is people call call businesses and pretend to be their MSP. They pretend to be, so they can say, hey, I'm calling, because they can fake the phone number that the caller ID shows. And and they can even fake the voice. So we're actually implementing, verification software. So soon our clients will be able to verify us just like we verify our clients.
got it. I'm sure that's very important. It's just the times that we're currently in. We did talk about AI, the threats that, on the rise. Is there a way that businesses should adjust their current security strategies?
Really, it's all the same things. The only other thing I would say is that now you have to verify who you're talking to even more. So never wire money based on an email, in all reality, or a text message. Actually call the number that you have for that person, or for that company, and put in their extension number in order to talk to them to actually get wiring information. So this is an area where businesses are getting hit a lot, whether they're buying a house or they're, starting a construction project and they're wiring money. You cannot trust what you get from people just via email, or even just if they call you, you don't necessarily know that's the real person. I would call back. And don't call the number that's in the email. Call the number that, is either on the company's website or that you have in your contact records. Beyond that, again, training, advanced security products, and, I didn't mention earlier, patching all the computers. That's another area where people don't, they'll get compromised because their computers are running Windows that has vulnerabilities that should have been patched 2 years ago, still unpatched. Well, you just make yourself low hanging fruit just by browsing the internet. You are potentially compromising your organization.
Got it. Thank you so much, Leo. And what exactly does an NSP do, and why should businesses consider working with one?
So a managed services provider, it's the new name for IT consulting. And the main difference between regular IT consulting, what used to be IT consulting, and managed services is our job is to keep the customer up and running. And instead of getting paid per hour when the client has problems, our job is to prevent those problems in the first place. So they're paying us per month, typically per user or per computer per month. Our responsibility is to make sure that they don't have to call us. So that's the ideal situation with MSP environment, is the customer almost never has to call us unless it's for good stuff. And we don't have to drive out for emergencies. And that becomes very profitable for both us and for our clients, because if we do the right thing and they don't have problems, they get to do their business. They get to do their job, and they're not wasting time talking to us. And if we find that we're seeing the same problem over and over and over again for multiple employees in the same organization, then it's really behooves us to figure out, how do we solve those problems so they stop calling. So it's selfishness that really works for both sides of the equation, because they don't want to call us. They want to do their job. They're busy. They're oftentimes understaffed, and then talking to us takes away from what they need to do. So if we can really do our job properly and keep them up and running and not having problems and not getting compromised and those types of things, then it makes it much more profitable for us, makes it a more interesting job for us, because we can be working kind of on the next, project to make them more efficient, to utilize technology better. And we're not having to deal with, the monotonous, I can't print, I can't print, I can't print. If you hear that from 10 clients, every day, that's just not fun, just from a, IT job perspective. The other thing is, in smaller companies, they can't necessarily afford good IT staff. So if you have under 100 employees, you probably shouldn't have a full-time IT person, because that IT person is going to get stale. in that environment. They only see that environment, so they don't know what else is available out there. And then also that person gets sick and goes on vacation once in a while. So then what do? Now you have to have a firm that you can contract with. And then what happens when that IT person leaves and finds a different job or gets hit by a bus? So now you have all your eggs in one basket versus when you work with an MSP, we don't go on vacation. We can't do a company retreat, just close for a week because our clients depend on us. So we're always available. And we have someone available on the weekends. We have someone always available for our clients. So that's really the main difference. Now, for larger companies, they may want to work with an MSP and have staff. And we have a number of clients like that where we do the more complicated projects, or, if they run into situations that they can't handle, then they escalate it to us. And then they also oftentimes use our tools to manage their environments. And then if they have big projects that they don't have enough manpower for, they want to roll out a couple hundred computers. Well, the IT staff can do it, but it'll take them potentially a couple of months versus they can contract with us. We come out and we'll get it done with them in 2 weeks.
Got it. No, that totally makes sense. So I get it. And maybe what should a business look for when they're trying to choose an MSP?
So, there's a million MSPs out there. Some are small as one person working out of their house. Others are, huge, public companies. It's really, based on your type of business. Who do you want to work with? You want to work with someone that's local, someone that, that for whom every client is important. So it's that the size. If if that MSP has one employee, you're very important, but they may not have the resources to properly support you. And then, do they have the tools? Can they afford the tools? Do they have cyber insurance? Because that's an area where, we maintain cyber insurance because no one's infallible. And if we get compromised, then potentially all of our clients can get compromised. But if any one of our clients gets compromised because of something we do, that's potential lawsuit, which we really, really want to avoid. But if we didn't have insurance, then they're not going to get that much. They're not going to be able to really become whole again. So any MSP they work with should have cyber insurance and be able to prove it, should have tools for verifying the end users that are calling, and really having enough expertise in their industry in order to properly support them and having that security focus.
Got it. And then when it comes to the type of client that you're looking to work with, what does that look like?
So for us, it is, we specialize in a few different industries. We have deep specialization in healthcare. So we've been working in healthcare for a very long time, really understand HIPAA and the requirements for that practices need. Also construction engineering and architecture firms. We've been working with those folks for a very long time and understand the industries, understand what they need in their software tools. And then other professional services organizations like law firms, CPA firms that need to be up and running because their business depends on their computers functioning, especially like for CPAs during tax season. And there's regulatory like CPAs are now governed by some regulatory requirements that they have to, because they have tax information, they have, social security numbers. There's a lot of data, just like healthcare, that they have of their clients. So it has to be secured. And there's both federal and state laws that govern those things. So we really understand that. But the other caveat, we don't want to work with companies, no matter how much they pay us, if they don't value what we do for them. So for us, it's important that it's a partnership. Our job is to keep them up and running, and their job is to listen to our recommendations. They don't have to do exactly what we say, but they at least need to listen to our recommendations and understand why we're making those recommendations, and not just say no because they don't want to spend the money. So if they're not willing to invest in their own business to keep themselves secure, at this point, our policy is not even to engage. So they have to be able to maintain a minimum level of security for us to even consider working with them. So someone that doesn't want to do the cybersecurity, softwares that at a minimum we recommend, we just can't work with them. Someone's not going to do data backup. It just doesn't make sense for us to work with them because we're risking our reputations if they get compromised. And in healthcare, if they get compromised because we didn't do what what's really required, we can be fined by Health and Human Services. And I'm not really willing to be fined and risk my business based on somebody else not wanting to spend budget on critical things.
Got it. No, and that's super important. No, and I totally understand. We're in the same I totally get it. I mean cabling's cabling and of course, but I know I totally understand what you're saying. And then when it comes to, what are some of the challenges that MSPs face when working with clients who don't prioritize cybersecurity?
So, I mean, the clients are prioritizing cybersecurity. We're just not working with them anymore. So it's not, it was a problem because, we were trying to kind of fight that good fight, but we were losing because if we, they're our clients, we're not their boss. They're our boss. But as the employee or the contractor or the consulting firm, we have the ability to decide who we work with. And we're working with those that again value what we're trying to bring to the table. The challenges for us now really is maintaining a good staff on our end because all costs are going up. So, all costs over this last, you know, the last 4 years was the costs went up tremendously, during COVID and after, and they're still going up, maybe not as fast anymore, but they're still rising. The tool costs, because we're finding that we have to add additional tools to our repertoire and we don't necessarily pass that on to our clients. So, staying profitable while doing what we need to do is a challenge. And just, again, really making the clients understand that, hey, there's a reason why we say, yes, it's inconvenient to do multi-factor authentication. It's terrible. I have to look at my, authenticator app a dozen times a day. It's extremely inconvenient, but it's critical because without that, you're pretty much, it's like leaving your door unlocked or even cracked open in a bad neighborhood with expensive stuff on the inside that people can see. So that's just a bad idea. Now you could do that for a day or two and you might not get burglarized, but you might get burglarized in the first 15 minutes. Your guess is as good as mine. So we just have to not, pray. We just have to actually do the right thing.
Got it. No, that makes total sense. So would you say in the beginning, you said it's not really something that you guys had dealt with in the past. Would you or not you're not dealing it with it as much. Do you feel like maybe you guys became more, I guess, better at educating your client and that's why you're currently not dealing with it as much?
No, I think we've just become more mature and as a business and gotten to the point where we're just not going to work with people that don't fit into our, ideal client kind of scenario. If somebody's not willing to do what we ask them to do, there's one or two things. If they're a good client, otherwise, we'll make them sign a declination of service, form where they're saying, yes, we informed them about how critical this is. They've said no, they've declined, and they know and they're willing to assume the risk themselves because now they are acknowledging they've been told. Because if you just have a conversation with somebody a year later, that person may no longer be there or 6 months later, and the person that replaced them is gonna blame us, even though they declined some of those critical services. So that's the one scenario. The other scenario is if it's serious enough, we'll just say, thank you for your business, but we're gonna have to help you transition to somebody else that may not care about these, security as much.
Got it.
And
Understood.
we're willing to do that versus, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we were smaller. We had fewer resources. We may not have been willing to do that as much because every client's important, but losing certain clients could have been, very detrimental to business. Now, no one client is is that big of a portion, a percentage of our revenues to where, we have to worry about that. And it's more important for us that the clients do the right thing, that we do the right thing for the clients than to keep the client.
Got it. And Leah, I totally actually understand exactly what you're saying. I feel like we're at the same place as well, which it's a great feeling when you don't actually have to depend on a client to eat or be able to feed your employees. So I do think that's actually a really good feeling.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing, the clients have to communicate. What I hate is getting the phone call. Hey, we ordered a bunch of copiers and they're here and they're going to take away our old ones. Can you guys come out and set them up? It's like, wait, copiers? He's like, why didn't we have this conversation? Because we don't charge our clients hourly. We're not attorneys. We don't charge every 15 seconds or 15 minutes. It's, you have a question, you want a new copier? Give us a call. We'll review the options and say, yes, this company's good. This company's bad. This one's not going to do what you need it to do, because that's our job. And then, we plan for good transitions. When we get those calls last minute, one, we're having to, either they're going to have to wait for us if we have a lot of other appointments, or if we're happen to be a busy day, or, or if it's really critical, we may have to put off somebody, some other client, because of the poor planning. So that communication is really important. Getting a phone call, hey, we're moving our office next week. Can you guys come out and help with that? Okay, well, what about internet? Do you have internet? Oh, can you guys set that up? Well, no, we can't get fiber internet for you in a week. That's not, none of the internet providers move that fast. We need 30 days. Those types of things, that's what makes a good client. It's that proper communication. They need to reach out to us when it's appropriate. We need to reach out and inform them about things when it's appropriate. That two-way communication, just like in any relationship, whether it's an employee-employer, whether it's, a relationship between spouses or boyfriend, girlfriend, kids, whatever, there has to be that communication. Otherwise, you end up with problems.
Yeah, no, totally. Very, very true. And then how what are some misconceptions do businesses often have about MSPs, and how have any of those changed in the recent years?
I mean, everyone has their own misconceptions, or some just think that we're just trying to sell stuff, and selling stuff is such a small part of our business that honestly we just don't care. Whether you buy computers from someone else or from us, sure, we prefer that you buy it from us, but we don't really care. What we care about is that you buy the right stuff. So who you buy it from it really is irrelevant. Beyond that is that there's a major, I think the biggest misconception is that just because you have an MSP, that they're handling all of your cybersecurity, your HIPAA compliance, all that they're handling everything, unless it's specifically stated, they're not. And, so when we get, oftentimes we're asked to fill out cyber insurance paperwork for our clients. One, I won't fill it out. I will look at it. I'll tell them what I think the answers are. They need to fill it out, because if I fill it out, then I'm putting myself on the hook that this is all true, that they are really doing those things. And oftentimes they think, well, as long as I have an MSP, I'm compliant. It's not true unless you actually do the things that you have to do to be compliant. So that's a big misconception as well. And we try to keep our clients compliant, but we still have some few legacy clients where we may not handle everything for them like we would like to. And, unless it's actually in our agreement, we're not doing it. Because, again, we'll recommend it. If they say no, get them to sign off saying that they know that they've been told. But, that's something people really need to think about.
Oh, and I
And the other thing is that, hey, I've got, cloud, all my software's cloud. It's all, other companies we're compliant, we're secure because it's not installed on a server in our office. Still, you're still just as vulnerable as if you had the server in your office.
got it. Would you say with being on the cloud, you're more at risk?
No, not necessarily. Oftentimes you're less at risk as far as data loss, because if you have a cloud provider for whatever software, CRM, or, electronic health record system or practice management system, there's, nothing that you're going to do is going to cause that server that you're connecting to over the internet to be encrypted. So you're not going to get ransomware issues. There's a chance that the vendor could get ransomware if they're not properly managing things. And we've seen that before, but that's not something that you have control over. What you have control over is if someone compromises your computers and gets the password to that system and is able to exfiltrate all the data. you're still just as vulnerable for that as if it was on your network. So the uptime piece, you're not as vulnerable about, as long as the vendor you've gone with is a good vendor. But the potential for data loss, because now anybody, when it's on your network, someone has to break into your system and actually use your systems to access it, or somehow, get into your network. When it's in the cloud, anyone in the world potentially, if they have the username and password, can now get in there, make changes, steal data. So that becomes, reusing passwords becomes a really big issue, using poor passwords, or even storing passwords in your browser. Because clicking on a bad link, the bad guys get all your passwords immediately, literally instantly. So, not using a password manager makes, being in the cloud less safe.
Got it. Thank you for sharing that, Leo. And then where do you see that the future of managed IT services heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
So there's going to be a lot more AI enablement, artificial intelligence. Well, there's a lot of bad things happening because of AI. There's going to be a lot of good things. So you have AI involved with security. You have AI involved in service delivery, where, we're about to implement some AI tools to make communication with us better. So there's going to be, AI phone agents, I think, are going to be able to solve a lot of frontline problems for our clients, so that they don't have to wait for our staff. So I can see a lot more self-service, where they're going to be able to call in, they get verified, they can make a request, and our AI will immediately handle that for them, so that they don't have to wait for a person to do it. So it's going to speed up service delivery. It's going to make the communication better. All at the same time, it's also making communication more dangerous, because the bad guys are going to be using it to pretend to be us, to pretend to be our customers, to try to get us to do things, that we wouldn't otherwise do. So it's really it's going to be the battle of the AI. And, I think this is the decade of AI. This 10 years is going to be massive changes. I mean, it'll continue indefinitely, but it's going to be absolutely massive changes in every industry.
No, I can totally see that. And that was actually coming into my next question is how do you think AI and automation will impact the role of MSPs and cybersecurity trust strategies?
So again, really the same answer. It's, we're using AI tools that are getting better and better and better at spotting malicious activity. And at the same time, there's AI tools that are going to be used to try to do that malicious activity. So literally you're going to have Skynet battling, EarthNet, whatever you want to call it. So it's just going to be, it's going to be the battle of the AIs with humans that are needing to look at when AI flags something, you're going to need to look at, is this legit? Is this not legit? Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of human intervention that's going to be needed, but the AI tools are going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, at least on the front end, both on the bad guy side and on the good guy side.
Got it. No, that's something for us to think about, Leo. If someone's what would you like to share with our is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience before we go?
No, I think we've covered just about everything. Really, it's a matter of staying educated, staying on top of, on what's out there, not being, not trying to risking $1 million, by saving $1. So that's really important. But then also knowing you don't have to buy every tool the tool that's being sold. It's really a matter of covering your bases, properly training your employees, having processes in place. If the CEO emails the CFO and says, "Hey, I need you to wire, you know, $500,000 to this new vendor. It needs to get done today, and I'm hopping on an airplane. Email me when it's done." No, you have to have a process in place that would never happen. That would be a phone call. That would not be, that would be a phone call with a callback with some kind of a pin. Just there has to be processes and checks and balances for everyone to protect themselves from the corporate level all the way down to the family level. When you get that call that, hey, we got your kid here, talk to them for a second. There needs to be some kind of a real, like, code that that's really them. It's not someone that is using AI to make it sound like it's them.
Got it. No, I get that. Thank you so much today, Leo. It was a pleasure. If someone is looking to connect with you, how do they do so?
So they can email me at leob@htsfast.com. That's Henry Tom Sam and the word fast.com. The website can be reached by htsfast.com as well. That's really, look me up on LinkedIn, look me up on, on the web, and would love to talk to just about anybody. We're also looking for companies that are in business friendly states in the United States that are in managed services that are looking potentially to either get out or sell. We're looking for smaller MSPs that would like to join a larger team.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Leo. We'll be sure to put that in the description. And everyone have a good day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a great one.
You too.